Wow, that was loud. How are you, Nick?
I'm okay, Yuri. How are you?
Listen, I think this is one of the last opportunities for sane people to discuss the debate. And it was the loudest debate, I think, in vice presidential debate history because there was so much attention. Some say no one watched. 70 million, or million almost, watched the presidential debate. And this one was close to 45 million, which is kind of envious for any news program or any show, anything. Just momentarily, fleeting and compared to this. To everything else, so the interest was huge. And were you disappointed? What's your comment? Nicholas Chamberas is with us. He's a public affairs strategist, as you can see on screen, and a friend and like-minded person who regularly writes on Newsmax and other outlets and helps in many American and international affairs.
Um, yes. So if some of your listeners and viewers may recall, I the last time I was on your show, I pushed back hard against some of the rhinos who were attacking JD Vance's candidacy, and like I said, there were a couple of vice presidential picks that I would have been happy with. JD Vance was at the top of the list, obviously, and the rhinos were apoplectic when JD Vance was picked because not only is he a legitimate, authentic supporter of MAGA policies, but he's also a very intelligent, very articulate state senator, United States senator, who would be able to deliver the message and enunciate and articulate Donald Trump's ideas in a powerful, convincing, persuasive way. Moreover, he's not from the country club. I love country clubs, but this is someone who can relate to working class families, to lower income class families, to the middle class in a way that very few other candidates possibly could. And at the debate, I think my defense of Senator Vance was validated. I think we were all vindicated. He did an outstanding job. Now, obviously, in any debate, you can't. There were some things I wanted him to tell Governor Walz. There were quite a few things.
We want a show. We want something,
right. And look, there were quite a few things that I had hoped President Trump would tell Kamala Harris in the debate. But having prepared several candidates in high-profile races for debates in the past, I must tell you that the comparisons I like to use, obviously, one is more common, is it's like chess and it's like boxing. But in this instance, you had a situation where the referees were on the side of one of the opponents. So it's like, in a chess match, when your opponent tries to make a move, they're like, no, you can't do that, and he stops them. And in a boxing match, it would be as if the referee was not only shielding the other opponent, but attacking one of the other boxer in the ring. So there were things, yes, definitely. I think we all would have loved to see Kamala Harris completely exposed and Governor Walz completely exposed on the debate stage. But bear in mind, in both instances, it was 3 against 1. Definitely, I think the word I would characterize the behavior of the moderators with Senator Vance's debate, I think, was embarrassing. I'd use a stronger word for the presidential debate. I think those two were disgraceful. They may as well have gotten up on the podium. But all in all, I think Senator Vance delivered a powerful, convincing performance. He made a very strong case for why we need to elect Donald Trump. We need to start working hard on repairing this disaster and catastrophe caused by the Biden-Harris administration. And I think the moment where Senator Vance just made the most docile Republicans and independents just get up and start cheering and yelling and celebrating was when he fact-checked the fact-checkers. I could not believe what they said. And I've been conditioned. You have to remember, with Donald Trump, he had to be very careful not to appear too combative against either Vice President Harris or the moderators themselves. But I don't think Senator Vance really had that issue. So when the two moderators claimed that the illegal aliens in Springfield were not illegal aliens, that they were here legally, and just
TPS.
Yeah, and I was just like, here we go again. And I think all of us were like remembering from the time of Mitt Romney and some other people, just they're going to take this. And Senator Vance, I think this is really what hurt Governor Walz, because Governor Walz, I think if you notice, he was sent reeling after that. Senator Vance said, hey, hold on a second. First of all, they came here illegally, which they did. And they're taking advantage of the CPB1 app. That does not make them legal. So basically, and anybody feel free to fact check me on this. I encourage you. So the fact is, almost all of these people, all of the Haitian immigrants in Springfield crossed the border illegally. So they broke the law entering the country. Now, the fact that President Biden has given them parole, so to speak, or temporary protected status, does not negate the fact that they broke the law coming into this country. So basically, yeah, they broke the rules, unlike the tens of thousands of people literally right now across the world who played by the rules, who are waiting to get here legally, who are doing the paperwork, who are doing the documentation, and they're waiting years patiently. Unlike them, they broke the rules, they bypassed the border, but they have legal protection. That does not make them legal immigrants. So when Senator Vance hit hard back and he gave them pushback and said, no, you're not going to do this. He didn't use the words fake news, but he basically said, this is fake news and here's why. The fact that they had to mute his mic tells you all you need to know. They were sent reeling, and that put them all on the defensive.
Listen, we're so far beyond what is called common sense, and late to the party, Kamala Harris is trying to steal the common sense kind of label, like everything else she's trying to steal along the lines of the general policy of Democrats, socialists, and communists. But let me tell you what I think about it just in a few words. You can come here with papers. You can come here any which way. We're going to America. More or less, I assume that you knew that you were going to a country with certain rules and certain history. And at this point, you cannot say you had no chance to know, because everybody coming to this country has clutching the phone in his hand. And some are even guided, I was told, through the desert by someone who's telling them where to make a turn and what question to ask in Spanish, if you get lost, if you meet somebody. But that aside, there is a town of 50,000 residents, Springfield, Ohio, and you get people with some pieces of paper, TPS, whatever, documents, etc. 25 far away from the border, right?
Right.
I understand, and from Haiti even farther. So you get 25,000 people with whatever agreement with the local authorities, right? Dumped in the middle, and yes, they can show you the papers. But if they behave like some people behave, you have a right to complain, and it does not put like anything out of the realm of possibilities. And of course, we've seen in the pictures, we read about the Réveillon in Haiti now. We know that they have celebrations of Christmas in a very particular way, but it does not make it right. The fact that you have a paper and you come here and you slaughter a cow before on your neighbor's porch, it's not a kind of pretty sight, and not what you cannot yell at the time that at that moment that we are all a nation of immigrants, and then do things that are against the habits. So you cannot do certain things in Uzbekistan, where I came from. You cannot do in certain things in Greece, you cannot do certain things. In Moscow, you cannot do certain things. In every inhabited corner of the world. But let me. What my concern is, I am fascinated by the fact that we have so many fiery Republicans in the national spotlight on television, and we have such a long bench this year in terms of national options, choices, menu, you call them, whatever. And the Democrats have a bench the size of Pete Buttigieg, but he was the choice to be the stand-in for J.D. Vance, for was Tim Walz.
Bad choice, obviously.
Yeah, I was wondering what drove them, because he's the most articulate. Is he writing a book about big South Bend, right? South Bend, lower class or middle class or whatever class he's from. He's a professorial son, right? Also like Kamala Harris. So, what do you think? How do you think they prepped him? How do you evaluate the quality of preparation for Tim Walz?
Thank you.
He was on his own, I think, in my opinion.
Thank you for asking me that. Real quick, I want to make a point about Springfield, if you don't mind, because I think Republicans, a lot of Republican elected officials and strategists don't want to waste any more time on this. I think it's important to point out there are incidents of people eating cats and dogs and people's pets in Springfield.
And geese.
Let's clear that up. Yes, and geese. Contrary to the lies during the debate of President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, there are documented reports of these incidents. The Springfield town manager has acknowledged receiving reports from citizens about these incidents. There is a police incident where a police officer asked someone who's being arrested if they ate the cat. There were signs that this person did that, also that they had mental health issues. Nonetheless, these are not unfounded instances. These are not made up stories. This is a real concern. And as you mentioned before, it has to do with our way of life. Yes, there are traditions and customs in every country. However, as beautiful as melting pots are, and they are, there are core rules you need to adopt if you'd like to live lawfully and peacefully in another country. Back to Tim Walz. I think what changed everything for Governor Walz is as soon as Senator Vance fact-checked the fact-checkers, he knew it was game over. He knew this is not your typical apologetic Republican. Let me not name names again, and some people get upset. But as he saw that he was combative, he realized that if he just repeated the same talking points and made up facts, it would not go well for him. I'd also like to point out that this debate was tailor-made for Walz. Most of the questions they asked, they spent so much time on climate change and abortion, which is basically what Kamala Harris is running on. So I think Senator Vance, it's not just that he's more well-spoken than Walz. Obviously, Senator Vance is able to retain information, statistics, and facts a lot better than Governor Walz. I also don't think that Governor Walz really wanted to get into that. I don't think he wanted to start talking about facts and figures, because as much as the moderators were interrupting Senator Vance, and interjecting and injecting their own facts and figures, as we saw several times, Senator Vance was able to correct Walz. I think Walz was hoping, and I think Buttigieg was preparing, they were trying to make Senator Vance appear nasty. So, they miscalculated. They must have thought that Vance was going to come across as, again, the snooty know-it-all, huffing and puffing, almost like Al Gore did against George Bush in 2000. I don't know if you remember that.
Rolling his eyes, etc. got a lot
sighing
of
and
eyes. Yeah, we got a lot of eyes. Yeah,
yeah,
from Walz.
sighing, and at one point even going up next to Governor Bush, then at the time Governor Bush. So I think they weren't prepared for a composed, restrained Senator Vance, because there's just so much, like we said, so much we were hoping that the Republicans could expose the Democrats about so many issues. And I think he was overmatched. The avuncular shtick, so to speak, it wasn't going to work on a national debate stage. People want to know that you're competent, that you're capable of serving on day one. And while I wasn't in the preparation room, clearly Governor Walz did not make the case. I think the incentive also for him was that, we knew that going in, that no matter what happened, even if Governor Walz yelled pass at every single question, the mainstream media was going to declare him the winner. And CBS laughably tried to call this debate a tie. I don't know what kind of polling they did where they saw there was a tie, but it was an outlier. I think almost every other single poll showed that the majority of people thought Senator Vance won the debate easily. So I don't know how Buttigieg thought this was going to go. I don't know how Walz's debate handlers thought it was going to go. I think they were just hoping that Vance would be cocky and loud and obnoxious, and he wasn't that. And let me tell you, when you come from, you understand this, I certainly understand this, many people in the Brooklyn immigrant communities understand this. When you come from modest means or immigrant means, when you're not born, let me put this wider. When you're not born with a silver spoon in your mouth, so to speak, right? Because that catches more of a broader audience. When you're not born with advantages, it humbles you. No matter how smart you are, no matter how successful you become, you really never forget where you came from. And Governor Walz can claim whatever he wants, but his upbringing was a lot more privileged than Senator Vance's upbringing. So that grounds someone. And if they thought that Senator Vance was going to be your classic rhino going up there regurgitating the Chamber of Commerce talking points and seemed completely out of touch, they were sorely disappointed, obviously. He hit it out of the ballpark. Again, he hit it out of the ballpark. There are a few points we all wish he would have been given the opportunity to make, but this debate, it was 3-on-1 again.
Yeah. I was wondering, I would love to ask you about this. You certainly noticed that many times they were both in agreement on certain points, right? I would agree with my opponent at this point, etc. It was heard from both sides. What do you think? Was it a tactical kind of device, or was it a real situation where some common sense ideas were pronounced by Governor Walz, because he's a liar, basically.
I think going in, Governor Walz was coached and prepared to attack Senator Vance on those points of agreement. Once he saw the swift and brutal fact check of the fact checkers, he realized he's in there with somebody who he's just not at Senator Vance's level. So I think he intelligently decided to take a step back and not go on the attack. It would have been much worse if Senator Walz started to try to trade attacks if Governor Walz started trying to trade attacks with Senator Vance. So yeah, Walz was talking about ideas, and Vance was smart enough because he had the facts on his side to talk about being in agreement. I mean, look, of course we want the middle class to improve. Of course we want opportunities to increase for people. Walz had the much tougher task. Senator Vance put it more eloquently. Walz had a tough job in the debate. How do you defend the last 4 years of this administration? They've been a disaster for working class families. And really, again, if you're struggling to raise your family and keep your job and keep your mortgage or keep your apartment, if you're going through all of that, but you're obsessed with making sure partial birth abortion becomes codified and you can abort babies at 9 months, the Walz team, they're your people. But everybody else is asking legitimate questions like, what is your plan? And why haven't you done it in the last 4 years? So I think Senator Vance wanted to be careful not to come off as arrogant and condescending or rude. That was very important. And Governor Walz, again, he saw that attacking Senator Vance would just get him nowhere. He tried a couple of times, but.
Speaking of abortions, and we're not allowed to talk about it, of course, because we're men. But I had the letter from someone who was watching this program, and she lives in Georgia, state of Georgia, here in the States. And it was the first state that got this abortion ban, a correction to the state policies. And she had a situation a few times where she turned to the gynecologist and she needed. She had very problematic pregnancy, and she said there was never a problem. There was never a problem in doing what was necessary medically. I was close to factual abortion, but there was, I think it was some sort of as I said, problematic pregnancy. I just didn't pry, on this matter. Listen, there was two prominent occasions, like conspicuous occasions, when Governor Walz spoke, and one of them was misspoke rather, and one was when he was talking about his trip to China in 1989. And when he claimed he was at the Tiananmen Square, where there was the demonstration, and dozen of people, 10,000 people, they say, were murdered by the communists, burned on the spot, and ashes were washed down the drain. And the second time when he misspoke was when he said was talking about Sandy Hook shooting, and he said, I met the shooters, I became friends with the shooters, and he meant parents, of course. That is obvious thing, but everybody noticed that, of course. It was very fast. But what about his? What do you make of his connection to China? Was it just a way to kind of to travel abroad more often? He was there. First, they said it was there for 30 was there 30 times. Now the campaign corrected 15 times. He only went to China. I mean, it's not the country. If you're not Chinese, it's kind of above the batting average of a guy from Nebraska, right, or Minnesota, to go to China.
If Governor Walz was indeed in Tiananmen Square, it certainly wasn't on the side of the students. Governor Walz has some disturbing ties to the CCP that we need to look into. He has, I don't want to call anyone a liar without deeply, deeply looking into the matter, but there's so many instances of what he said absolutely not corresponding to the truth in any way, shape, or form. There's so many instances of things he claimed to have done have been shown to be absolute falsehoods. And I think that concerns us. There's so much about his record. It almost helps him because you can't zero in on one or two instances. There's so much you can start talking about, but it distracts from his record, which is also abysmal. And the school shooter, Democrats, shame on them. They have been using these tragedies time and time again to get votes, to fearmonger.
Yeah, they run commercials all the time, including this program. They say the parents of Sandy Hook victims, they come and they they promote what the I think they started it already to blame the Remington, the company that manufactures guns, just to be named and to start a case against them because they are to blame. Like I don't know, hammer manufacturers, knife manufacturers, fork manufacturers, you name it, anything could be a weapon of murder, of crime in human hands. That's the reality of it.
We need armed security in schools. Period. That's the solution. They can have their philosophical debates and play the blame game. We need to focus on how do we protect students now. Yes, the conversation is larger, and Senator Vance referred to a mental health crisis. We need to have that conversation because decades ago, students were taking rifles into schools, for target practice and
Yeah.
training. There weren't mass shootings. But again, we could be talking for hours about the root causes of these actions and the decline of the family in America. And that's what we need to talk about. That's what we need to discuss. At the same time, what are you going to do to protect students now? Have these long, obtuse discussions, trying to repeal the Second Amendment, or take real drastic steps to prevent school shootings, to protect the students. The conversation we should be having, the conversation Governor Walz should be having, is how to protect students. You don't save a single life by scapegoating people and blaming the Second Amendment here. Because like you said, there are hammers, there are knives.
Number one weapon of crime, of murder in the United States is a hammer.
When I was in high school, I actually saw there was a custodian arguing with one of the assistant principals on the first floor, and it was a heated argument. And we got closer, and I'm not doing it, and this isn't, and people pointing fingers and shaking their hands, and they're like, wow, what's going on. When we got to the third floor, we realized what they were arguing about. There was a trail of blood for about 50 yards from where we were walking. And a young girl had been assaulted by another girl with steel-tipped Timberland boots.
Oof.
Yes. And by the time they broke it up, you can imagine the damage that was done. I remember in my junior high school, I wasn't there at the time, I think a year or two after, when I was either a freshman in high school, a sophomore in high school, this girl had been gang assaulted with a broken beer bottle, requiring hundreds of stitches. And she almost lost her life. So why don't we have that conversation? How do we protect our students? How do we prevent these? We need to get to these young people before they start having these thoughts, these feelings, and we need to reach them and help them. And this is, again, part of a much, much larger and longer conversation. But I'm sick and tired of the Democrats using school shootings and family tragedy and death as a talking point. It's really disgusting. And again, I don't know how far Senator Vance would have gotten with the 3-on-1 talking about this more. But again, they really that's what the Democrats have this cycle.
Yeah, fact checking, by the way, is a misnomer. It's just the quality of fact checkers obviously plays a great role, and they try to shove it down our throats that their fact checkers are the best. And there is no Republican organization that does fact checking, as far as I know. At least publicly, it's not something that's advertised, like nothing like Spokes or PolitiFact on the Republican side, on conservative side. But it only exposes to me this media political complex, because I cannot imagine that Kamala Harris would like to have another debate. Sorry, it's against her nature. She is of do as I say, not as I do kind of politician. But it's a media political complex that's prodding her to do it. And she says, you won, let's do it one more time. And of course, it's a matter of ratings. It's a matter of inflating the importance of old mainstream media types. and they want those 70 million pairs of eyeballs watching the debate, and to show their power and how they are bigger than anything online. And it includes online, by the way, as well. But it's and at the same time they arrange this whole thing under the premise of the pretense of being something fair and classical and even-handed. And look, second debate, and absolutely the moderators are on the side of the very one-sided, and they do it pretty much quite clumsily. In both cases, they even use the same phrase: "We have so much more to discuss." Who cares about what you have on your little paper to discuss? We're here to hear the candidates, not you. That's the plan. They should be basically invisible. And this nonsense was the absence of the public audience. What's this? It's totally kind of defeats the purpose. Not totally, but 60% for sure of this whole, because we need to hear, we need to know. We are you can kind of fact check your audience. You can have 1550 or 1640, whatever would reflect the political political what's the word, parts of the percentage of political convictions in this country. But just have real people respond to what is said and make it a show, because that's what you want. There would be 100 million people watching it if there were this audience.
But that's not the goal. You see Disney taking huge losses again. Just middle of the road, people with just common sense values are recoiling from patronizing Disney or buying any Disney products or watching Disney or using any Disney services. I think the goal is not for ratings. You know, they had to have known, ABC must have known, CBS must have known that they would lose viewers after what they polled at the debate against Senator Vance. They must have known. They don't care. The goal is not ratings. The goal is not, well, they want to get ratings, but the goal is not to be fair and even-handed. The goal is to get Kamala Harris elected. And this may be a controversial point, but when it's not 3-on-1, I'm not so sure Biden wouldn't have done better than Harris did against Trump. Because with Trump, Biden, the moderators were very restrained. They really didn't insert themselves. And with President Trump and Vice President Harris, they constantly interrupted with their fake facts and fake fact checks. And it made it much harder for President Trump to debate. Same thing with Senator Vance and the CBS moderators. They have one goal, and that is to find a way to elect Harris. This may be the worst presidential administration in the history of the United States. I think Barack Obama's administration is up there. Maybe they were worse. And it's a close election, unfortunately. And the goal is elect her. Do whatever it takes. Spread lies, fathom lies, don't correct lies. You know, the economic statistics that Harris and Walz keep repeating. So pre-pandemic, under Trump, we were almost creating 200,000 jobs a month. That was the standard during Trump pre-pandemic. I think, you know, after the pandemic, I think we're averaging something like 80,000, 89,000 jobs a month now.
Probably. Yeah, and it's a big fake, fat fake number of jobs that was corrected to.
Right.
The last report, almost 1 million jobs were fake.
Real wages have actually declined under Biden-Harris. Under Trump, we saw unprecedented wage growth across all sectors, but where was it highest? For working class, middle class families in America. So they don't get fact checked on any of these preposterous claims. they claim they created a lot more jobs. They claim that Trump presided over a jobs depression. Yeah, when Democrats force a shutdown and his health advisors lie to him about shutting down the country for 2 weeks or whatever, and they actually intend to do it for more like a year. Yes, you're going to tank the economy. But there was unprecedented prosperity under President Trump, and they're getting away with murder with the economic statistics. But it's difficult. Again, they're in the tank.
Listen, we have Bidenomics, right? This glorious construct, and that brought so much prosperity and peace to the families, and world order, which is tranquil, and everybody's sitting still. All the dictators are quiet these days because of Trump. Biden-Harris administration. I'm going all Walz on you. So yeah, everything is peaceful. Everybody's happy. They tell us that inflation's down, job creation's up, etc., etc. Why longshoremen are striking? 35,000 people, and they're striking no less than against the robots, as they call them. I think that includes parts of artificial intelligence, and they want wages up, and they got 50% increase, and they say no, we want more than 50% increase in salary. How come they're unhappy under such a great blue collar president as Joe Biden is, and definitely the middle class Kamala?
Anyone who's not an oligarch should be unhappy under this administration. If your net worth is not up over $1 billion, you have reason to be sorely disappointed in this administration. And again, this has been the administration of the oligarchs, the plutocrats, the extreme social experimentation, and there is middle class angst, and there is working class angst, and people who want to work for a living want to be paid commensurate with what they're doing and the profitability of their organizations. And I'm hoping that President Biden finds a way to intervene and resolve this matter quickly before.
Oh yeah. He's running. He just started this morning. Left his Delaware residence, and he's on his bike. Yeah, to get there.
It scares the daylights out of you because it's not just in global conflicts where it looks like they don't care or they're just not going to do anything constructive. But you see with this strike is they're not going to do anything about it. And look, this strike, again, represents the chaos fomented by the Biden-Harris administration. They don't know what to do. On the one hand, this is the corporatist administration. It's a continuous of the Obama administration, where they were constantly in bed with 4 or 5 big industry captains. They got together, they decided what was going to happen, and that was it. Workers be darned. Now it's like, yes, they're still in bed with the titans, but they're getting so much pushback from all over the place, they don't know what to do. And they don't really care. They've made record profits, and they're going to continue making record profits. Whether the economy crashes or prospers you can tell it's not on the minds of this administration. I mean, I don't mean to sound extreme or harsh, but these people care far more about making sure that 300-pound biological males can compete in women's sports than making sure that kids' families can afford college. That's just a fact. They don't care. That's the issue here. And I'm not going to demonize the longshoremen. They're obviously, we can't have it both ways. We talk about, as capitalists, that the business of a company is to maximize profits. Right. You can't begrudge these folks for seeking as much money as possible for them. You can't ask them to make sacrifices when their companies are making record profits. At the same time, obviously, you have to be reasonable, and you can't destroy somebody else's job because you're trying to blackmail a company. But this shows another failure of the administration. They didn't see this coming, or they just didn't care. Because yes, we want all working men and women to receive fair wages, to receive good wages. We don't want them to get into agreements that are just going to basically terminate their jobs 2-3 years down the line. At the same time, we don't want to celebrate or encourage actions that are going to cause tens of thousands of other people to lose their job. Salespeople, warehouse workers, store owners, small business owners, they're at risk of losing their jobs because of this strike. And once again, if it's not a big donor, it doesn't seem like Harris, Biden, Walz care to do anything about it. The fact that they haven't come out with a plan to address this should scare us all. And it does scare us all. Similar to global conflicts, this would not have happened if President Trump was in office. I mean,
listen, and what's very indicative also is that both Israel and Ukraine at this point, they are not relying as we would think they should be thinking about relying on the United States. We have two veterans in charge of our policy operation, more than two, but most visible are Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan. And of course, who is really in the pocket of Vladimir Putin is disturbingly, our CIA boss, William Burns. He has a history, and there's a big article by Andrei Larionov who just describes what really is going on behind the scenes between the U.S. between the U.S. and Russia, Putin's Russia. But those people all failed spectacularly. I don't know what was the goal, but definitely not the stated goal is not in even the biggest binoculars. You cannot see it, and Ukraine is hitting as deep inside Russia as they can. Zelensky went to see Donald Trump, and I had my own prediction about this meeting, and there's some reasoning why he went there, because it was a no. You cannot be anywhere close to Donald Trump if you want American assistance. And Israel obviously is like smashing whatever's in sight in terms of enemies. We have a little limitation these days because high holidays are upon us, so we don't get as much news from Israel, because a lot of people are observing, and they just stopped doing anything. They celebrate among it all, but it's a failure on the international arena as well, a spectacular failure, and I think it's easily correctable, but not with this bunch of idiots.
Last year,
thieves.
Last year, when some people were talking about World War III, I feel guilty now because I thought they were just exaggerating. And I said, oh, everybody wants, clicks and clickbait. And if Donald Trump is not elected, we will be on the verge of World War III and maybe World War IV as well. Again, so the Biden-Harris administration has been a continuation of the Obama administration. I would need another 4 hours, and don't worry, Yuri, I'm not going to ask for that, but I would need another 4 hours to explain how, in my view anyway, this is just basically a proxy for the Obamas, the way they've governed. And foreign policy was never a strong suit of Obama, neither was the economy, obviously, not macro anyway. They don't, I'm going to use, something that when we talked about sports growing up in Brooklyn, they don't know what they're doing. And countries are starting to realize that. Mm-hmm. Before we were a global force, the world's only superpower, countries are realizing we have no idea. I wrote about this years ago in the withdrawal from Afghanistan. When they saw our panicked withdrawal, no plan, Basically, I mean, unless somebody inside the government is sympathetic to the Taliban, how did you not see this a year in that the Taliban would take over within days of a U.S. withdrawal? And
Yeah.
when we even gave up Bagram Air Force Base, and when we let 13 soldiers get murdered by
It's
these
basically a
terrorists,
city, this air base. It's basically a
right,
city.
right, and we left behind billions of dollars of the most sophisticated weaponry we had. What message does that send to the rest of the world? So I'm not just looking at, obviously right now we need to focus on ending the war in Ukraine, about securing peace and stability for Israel and the Middle East as a region in general. Those are the two fires right now. We also have to look at the fact that China is preparing to invade Taiwan. I'm not saying China will invade Taiwan tomorrow, next month, or even next year. But it's fair to say that we're going to deal with a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, with the prospect of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan far sooner than anybody had imagined.
Yeah.
We are looking at Turkey becoming very aggressive in Europe and the Middle East. We are looking at North Korea starting to saber rattle again.
Yeah.
And whatever your complaints against President Trump about his relationship with North Korea, it worked. We were on our way, it was the most peaceful 4 years between North Korea and South Korea that I can remember in my lifetime anyway. There was no real chance of war between the two Koreas. Now we're looking at war between North Korea and South Korea. Who's stopping them? Who's going to discourage them? Who's going to discourage certain countries in Africa, dictatorships, declaring war against each other? No one. This administration, I think the longshoreman strike, which you mentioned, encapsulates what's going on. We don't know who's in charge. We don't know if anyone's in charge, and we don't know if anyone cares in this administration. And that's leading to danger. And people are just everyone for themselves, and they're not doing things in consultation with each other. And there's this mistrust of the United States, and more than that, we're basically viewed as incompetent diplomatically. And this is a very dangerous time.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I hope that the American people will vote in en masse, as they say. And more. Yes, I do. And we have to use the early voting by mail system. Yesterday, I got. I ordered the ballots for my family, my elders, because they are kind of not feeling very well. So they're going to vote the way that Governor Hochul would like us to vote. And their voice will be heard. But I went through this whole system of ordering. And let me tell you, you can order a ballot from anywhere, wherever you are. If you are on the record there, you may have moved a long time ago. If you have information about someone who's a former member of your family, and you want them to vote the way you would vote, then you can put their name, not even address, the zip code and the date of birth, and you get the ballot to be. I mean, if you are feel like you want to break the law, there's a lot of opportunities. Is what I'm saying, and it's all provided by Governor Hochul and our New York legislature that did not smother it in the crib. This whole idea that the COVID regulations in this part should remain while there is no COVID in sight. But that's the situation we're in. And maybe the last thing I would like to briefly discuss with you is What do you think of the probability that these elections would be somewhat akin to what we had in 2020 in terms of accusations of dishonest manipulations and in other things?
Well, it's interesting you brought that up. There was another key point in the debate with Senator Vance and Governor Walz that initially I was disappointed, but then I was happy that Senator Vance did not take the bait. They asked him about whether he thought Trump won the election in 2020, and they mentioned that courts reviewed these cases and found that there was no evidence of impropriety. Again, another outrageous falsehood. I am not alleging election fraud. I want to be clear about this, okay? I'm not alleging that anyone cheated, but the truth of the matter is most, if not all of these courts did not dismiss these cases because they found no evidence. They dismissed them on technicalities like jurisdiction. So there was no investigation about impropriety, okay? This was not examined carefully and settled. So I'm glad Senator Vance did not get into the weeds on this because into the home stretch, the Democrats want to talk about climate change. They want to talk about abortion, January 6th threat to democracy.
Yeah.
That's what they don't want to talk about.
And that Dick Cheney's on their side now.
Yeah, great. Wow. Okay.
What a fine addition to the team.
Yeah. They don't want to talk about.
Yeah,
they don't want to talk about World War III. They don't want to talk about the worst economy in the last 40 years, maybe the worst economy in the last 100 years. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the fact that we lost 24,000 manufacturing jobs in America in August. No, this was supposed to be the manufacturing administration spending billions of dollars to increase manufacturing, which we knew was just going to go to their pie in the sky Green New Deal initiatives. No, they don't want to talk about that. Getting more specific to your point and to your question. So there's a lot of blame to go around. Why certain systems remain in place and why there seems to be an opportunity to pull shenanigans with ballots. Mm-hmm. Yes, the Democrats are at fault in some instances for insisting on things. At the same time, in many states, some states have been outstanding, like Florida, Alabama comes to mind, North Carolina, where they've taken steps to purge the rolls. At the same time, many Republicans have just been asleep at the wheel. They don't want to get involved in this.
No kidding.
If we start talking about New York State, you know, I'm going to go on a rant that will take another week to finish. So you know this, and you could probably compete with me about this because we both know the deal and what's going on. But we have to, I don't know if you saw my latest in Newsmax, which talked about.
I did.
Which asked, have the Republicans lost the will to fight? And I was talking about the House Republicans. And this is a great example, the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act, all it says is, in order to register to vote, you must be a citizen of the United States and provide proof of citizenship. If you can't provide proof of citizenship, in the bill, several provisions are contained where free of charge, they help you secure proof of citizenship so you can register to vote. The second part of the SAVE Act would have just required states to delete illegal immigrants from their voter rolls. So Speaker Johnson had a golden opportunity. The House and Senate Republicans had a golden opportunity to bring this issue to the forefront of national politics and say, we're not passing continuing resolution until you pass the SAVE Act. But not only did they blink, House Republicans surrendered again. Yeah. They didn't attach it. They tried attaching it. 14 House Republicans actually voted against it because they don't want to fight. They've lost the nerve to fight against Democrats. If you're running for office as a Republican and you don't want to go out and make the case either to your constituents or your prospective constituents, that illegal immigrants shouldn't vote. And number two, and secondly, that illegal immigrants should be purged from the voter rolls. If you can't make that argument, if you can't fight for that or won't fight for that, how are you going to fight for lower taxes? How are you going to fight for
anything, basically,
or anything? Yeah, or anything else. So they focus. Another indication, I'm not saying the Democrats are going to cheat. I just want to be clear about that. But we're all worried about it. Let's not be hypocrites. I'm not saying that they're going to cheat. I'm not saying that I have information that they're planning on cheating. The 800
they cheat everything else. This particular one is sacred. This is where they won't touch it.
Yeah, I mean, why would they be suing states that remove illegal immigrants from the voter rolls? I don't know. There could be other explanations. But does that mean that I don't have the right to worry? That other people aren't going to be worried? That this issue is not going to be on the minds of people? I think with the way the economy is, with the way the global conflicts are, Donald Trump should be winning by 20 points. We know in the polls. We know why he's not going to win 20 points in the polls, because people aren't like us. There's so many voters who just don't have time to pay attention to this. And believe it or not, there's still plenty of voters who get most of their information from ABC, NBC,
and there's so many of them,
which is unfortunate, and that's another thing we're up against. But people are worried about cheating. I've talked about the infamous Fulton County huge suitcases, camouflage, where they're taking the ballots after kicking out election observers. So I hope we're not over time. Do I have another minute? I just want to talk about this.
Yeah, we have a few minutes.
So basically, all we can do, and what we have to do this time is, I'm sure cheating is on the minds of a lot of Republican voters. I'm sure people are concerned. In conjunction with that, the Democrats, because of their massive financial advantage, they don't only have the mainstream media, but again, the big corporate interests are on their side. So they have, I wouldn't say in terms of quality, but in terms of sheer numbers and experience, they have a much bigger ground game than Republicans. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
I talked to field directors and people in other organizations. I'm not referring to the quality of the GOP ground game. I'm talking about the sheer size of the Democrats' ground game. So we're gonna have to do, in my view, we're gonna have to do things to make up for this. What does that mean? That means that if you're a loyal Trump supporter and you're on Facebook fighting this fight, good for you. Great. That is outstanding. Go outside, talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. If you're somebody who hates social media and doesn't know how to turn on your computer, maybe, and just goes to your neighbors,
that's your time to shine.
But also, get online. Everybody needs to take the extra step. Volunteer. There are going to be election integrity teams. This is not about rage. We don't want to be put in the same situation as 2020, where the amazing, infamous, I'm telling you folks, QAnon was a fake Democrat psyops tool to fake out Republicans, to make sure they don't go vote, to fool Trump supporters. We do not want to be in a position where the day after the election, we're talking about stop the steal. You know where we stop the steal? We stop the steal from now through election day by winning in huge numbers, which is possible. If you look at the most reliable pollsters like Trafalgar and Atlas Intel, Trump is starting to pull away in the battleground states. We can't take our foot off the gas, though. We need more volunteers, even people who hate volunteering, even people who wouldn't volunteer to do anything ever. I understand, but now is not the time to stay on the sidelines. If you care about this election, if you really want to make the difference, you're going to have to help. I don't mean to be annoying, but you have
We
to
have to be annoying this until November 5th. Don't
we have
expect
to
much
talk to
entertainment.
people. We can't pat ourselves on the back, and this is an issue that concerns me a little bit. There are people, they're like, everybody I'm talking to is voting for Trump. Great, but have these people really voted for anybody besides a Republican before? Go talk to a Democrat. Go talk to a Harris supporter. They want to scare us. They want to intimidate us they want to make it taboo to be a Trump supporter, to actually want Americans to have prosperity and safety. They want to scare us. It's time to talk to people civilly, politely, respectfully. It's time to engage them. We've had debates with Biden, debates with Harris, debates with Walz now. You've seen that they have no plan. The plan is to just let the media win this election for them. Are you really going to let these people influence your life for the next 4 years? No, we don't want that. But we just can't get complacent. We need to get out there. We need to be respectful, civil, not do anything unethical or illegal, not cheat, but we need to talk to people who are undecided, who aren't sure. There's nothing wrong with engaging. So if you don't get on the computer, send some emails. If you're only communicating through Twitter, try to talk to some people around you. If you have some time to be an election monitor, especially in the big metropolitan areas, go become an election monitor. If you're in a deep blue state where, for whatever reason, you know that the Democrats are going to win the state, they're going to win most of the local races. If you're in such an area, go volunteer. It's so encouraging to see how many New York groups are going to Pennsylvania every week, during the week and on the weekends. Now is not the time to be complacent. I'm not going to lie to you and say, I could be wrong. Maybe we do have a much better ground game, and I just don't know about it. We have a much better quality ground game, but we just don't have the numbers that the Democrats do. We don't have the financing, and we're making up for it with volunteers. So yes, I understand people are reluctant to volunteer. I understand people are reluctant to get involved. But if you don't get involved, if you don't volunteer, if you don't make your voices heard, we may not have a country in 4 years. So you have to get out there.
Yeah, what I have here is the way that our government, the New York State government, and our governor proposes to participate this time. And I encourage everybody to order this, request this ballot and vote this way. And you can do it if you are in Pennsylvania. If you registered in New York, you can do it. They will mail it back. They will mail it to you. And you mail it back, I think, free of charge. You don't have to put a stamp on this pretty large envelope with the ballot in it. So you do it, and it makes it easier for any one of you. The way you send the photos of kittens and jokes and stuff like that, encourage your circle of friends to look into this and use this opportunity to draft more people to vote if they're legal residents and citizens and everything else of the state of New York. So let's use this opportunity. And there was this recipe started by I think in 2020. Get 10 friends of yours, bring them to the polling, to the voting sites. So this makes it even easier if you think about it. Don't get all worked up about things that they do to us. Turn it against them. You found the weapon in the battlefield, grab it and join the fight. This is the thing.
Can I make one final point?
Yes.
I don't know again how we're doing with time, but I'm glad you mentioned that about weapons. So obviously the economy is by far the biggest issue. Immigration is a close second. These open borders. I really think one area where the Trump team a couple of issues where the Trump team can bring this home and turn it into a landslide, maybe even win the popular vote. Because I think if we win, I think we're going to win, I think it's going to be an electoral college landslide. But one area where, for whatever reason, we're not talking enough about these people. So on the economy, you can confuse, it's easy to confuse people, right? After the pandemic, people became very vulnerable. People became very reliant on the government. And with fear, you can accomplish a lot of things. And immigration, don't worry, I'm not going to go into a lot, but Senator Langford ought to be ashamed of himself. He has given the Democrats a shameless lifeline on this. They keep bringing up his bill, which would have brought in at least 2 million illegal aliens into this country per year, if that's okay. And that's just illegal, 2 million illegal aliens. And even his own bill, the president had the discretion to suspend that policy and bring in 3 or 4 million anytime he or she wanted. So one thing, a couple of things we need to talk about more that we're not is, there's a long record of Kamala Harris's attitude on immigration. A lot of people don't know this, but when she was Attorney General, Kamala Harris sent threatening letters to law enforcement agencies. And you can look these up. You can even still find the press releases. She warned law enforcement agencies that if they handed over even vicious criminals over to ICE, if they complied with ICE detainers, that they could be subject to legal consequences. Now, law enforcement agencies in this country, the bravest men and women we have, who really wants to put up, basically risk shutting down their own agency because they complied with an ICE detainer? It's a terrible situation to put people in. And you'll say, oh, well, that's just theoretical, that's just practical. Do you remember Kate Steinle in San Francisco?
Yeah, of course.
Who's walking with her father.
Fisherman's Wharf, like plain sight, illegal criminal, deported dozens of times.
ICE detainer for him. He had been arrested on marijuana charges, I believe. ICE detainer request for him a few weeks before.
Yeah. I think Nick will be back soon. I will keep an eye on it, but don't be surprised, дорогие друзья. Спасибо, что вы слушали нашу программу. Я надеюсь, что Ник вернется к нам для того, чтобы попрощаться. Он немножко далеко сейчас от наших берегов, но он вернется, и мы продолжим эту программу. В других аспектах, конечно, продолжим наши встречи с Ником Чамберасом, замечательным консультантом и специалистом по нью-йоркской и американской политике. Всего вам доброго и шана това.